Hey guys, I am Meredith and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be tackling something very exciting but also very scary. I am a huge fan of Rupaul's Drag Race. It's my absolute favorite show. It's the only show that I keep up with. I've seen all 13 seasons, all the All-Stars, UK, you name it, I have seen it. So season 13 is airing right now. Gottmik is one of the contestants, and let me tell you, the looks that she's turning on the runway are something else. They're amazing. But specifically, the look that I'm going to be tackling today is going to be the money bags look from the bag ball challenge. They had to do 3 looks that are related to bags in some way, and so there was a money bags challenge where it was just like opulence, and she did an amazing one shoulder suit with a humongous ruffle on the arm and on the legs, and I just knew the minute I saw that, first of all, that is one of the best runway looks I've ever seen in the entire franchise of RuPaul's Drag Race. That is one of the best runways I have ever seen. I gasped when I saw it. I was losing my mind. And when I saw it, I knew that I needed to try and make it myself. So the designer for that look was Brian Hearns. Hopefully I can do his design justice. I'm going to be taking some patterns that I already own and modifying them to suit my needs for this. So hopefully the sewing gods are looking over me and helping me out and nudging me in the right direction. But I will never know if I can do this until I just try, so let's give it a go. For this project, I'm going to use some black pinstripe fabric, 1 roll of 6-inch tulle ribbon, and 3 packs of rhinestones. The patterns I'm using are the Quick Sew K3363 and the New Look D0720. To kick this project off, let's start with the pants. So to adjust the pattern, I lengthened the leg of the pants by about 3 inches, and I also drew a straight line down from the curve of the hip. This is just to give the pants a little bit more of a straight shape versus the tapered shape that they come with automatically. Alright, so the pants are coming together. It's now time to work on the ruffles that are going to go on the sides. So I opted to go with a 6-inch wide tulle ribbon. So I have 5 layers of this, and this needs to be 3 times the length of whatever you were trying to make the ruffle for, because basically when you make the pleat, it's 3 layers of fabric. So it's got to be 3 times the length. I opted to go with the ribbon instead of just regular tulle fabric because I feel like when you're hand cutting tulle, it gets messy so quickly. And if you make a jagged mark even one time, it's just so hard to get those edges perfectly smooth. And this is already pre-cut down to the size that I need. And this was only, I think, like a couple of bucks to get this, and this is going to be more than enough for the entire project, including the shoulder and both legs. So I've got, again, my 5 layers here. They're just pinned together on one side, and I'm going to be doing the fork technique for my pleats, which is a very simple technique. I did end up finding a video for this online, so I will link that in the description for y'all below in case you have questions about how to do that as well. It's a really helpful tutorial. So I'm going to be doing these directly on my machine. So you can do this where you do the pleats and pin them and then sew it later, or you can just start feeding the fabric into the machine, do your pleat, go, do your pleat, go. That's how I'm going to do this. And then once I have this all basted together in the pleat formation, then the pants will get put together with this on the side seams. So that's really the biggest change that I'm making there, is just completely following the instructions of the pants pattern, but then just adding this in on the sides. So I'm gonna get y'all zoomed in so I can show you the process of how I'm doing this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. When making the ruffle, start by holding the fork with the back of it facing you, and then carefully put the layers of the ribbon between the top 2 tines of the fork. Then flip the fork over and lay it down flat with the top of the fork facing up, and this will give you a perfect pleat. And then while holding the pleat in place, run it through your machine about halfway, and then repeat the whole process again. Alright, so I was able to finish the pants yesterday. There will be a couple more little finishing touches that we'll do, but we're going to do that at the very end. So now it's time to work on the jacket. So I'm going to be using a pattern for a dress that I actually had on hand, and this is the New Look D0720 or New Look 6524. There's 2 different pattern numbers listed here. So that is the pattern that I'll be using. It's just a super simple dress pattern. Of course, I'll make it shorter when I cut the fabric, and then I'll just cut across here to expose this side, and then it will just come together on the side here. Even though it's a jacket, and a jacket is a bit more complicated than a dress, because it only has 1 sleeve and it goes across the body, this is going to be the perfect shape that I need for the jacket. The biggest change that I will need to make is I will be using a sleeve piece that comes from this pattern as well, but it's a little bit of a bell shape. So if you can see here, it flares out at the bottom. I need this to be straight, and then I also need, so the way that this is going to work is there's gonna be a ruffle that goes up the middle of the sleeve. So I technically need two different pieces for the sleeve so that I can put it onto the jacket, and then this whole part right here will remain open until I'm ready to sew that up with the ruffle inside. So I am going to take this existing pattern piece and I'm going to kind of redraft it onto some pattern paper. You can actually get this at like a fabric store, and then I can go ahead and cut out my material, and then we can start sewing. Now, the jacket is the part that is absolutely stressing me out the most. I knew the pants would be sort of simple to make. I've made pants before, and it was a pretty straightforward pattern, but this is gonna be the part that gets a little bit more complicated, especially when it comes to adding on the collar, which I haven't even 100% figured out how I wanna do that yet. So let's just work on the body of the jacket first, and then when we get to that part, I can kind of make a plan for the collar. But I'm gonna show y'all how I'm gonna redraft this pattern. First things first, I folded the existing sleeve pattern in half. This gave me the two pieces I needed to add the ruffle to the middle of the sleeve. I then folded in the outside edges of the sleeve to make the sleeve a bit more straight. Once the pattern piece was looking good, I traced it onto my pattern paper, making sure to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the middle seam of the sleeve. The only change I made to the dress pattern was just to shorten it by folding it to the length I wanted, and I was aiming for a mid-hip length. All right, so this is looking really rough, but I wanted to just check in and let you know where I'm at. So I've got my front piece, which has the dart in it right here for the front. The back piece is attached as well, but it stops at my waist. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but if you watch the runway, which I will not include here because it's copyrighted, but if you watch the show, I'm sure you can find a clip of it. The jacket is actually open on the bottoms right here so that you can see the ruffle all the way up to the top of the pants. So this is kind of gonna be more like a tunic where it's like open on the sides. So I've got it stitched up to my waist. This side's open right now. I do just need to mark where this is gonna come together because I'm just gonna have a fastener at my waist and that's it. I'm not gonna sew this side up at all, but I need to mark that so that I can then cut this down because this is the full front piece. And then I also have my sleeve attached, which again is open in the middle. And this is where the ruffle is gonna go. So it's gonna get sewn in right in there, all the way up to here. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark where my waist is, and then I'm just gonna be cutting this. There's a natural line where the neckline right here, if you were to put like a big yardstick, you could do a straight line right across. So that's how I'm gonna cut this. And then I'm just gonna finish all the edges. And then we're gonna move on to the part that I'm dreading the most, which is the collar. Still not 100% sure how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna have to figure it out after this. So let me do that and get this cleaned up, and then we will move on to the collar. To give my top the one sleeve effect, I started by marking where I wanted my closure to go on my waist, and then carefully traced a line from the top of the shoulder down to the waist, and then cut one long straight line through both layers of fabric. And then to finish all of the edges, I folded them up about 1/4 inch and sewed them super close to the edge with a straight stitch. Okay, it is time to tackle this collar. I cannot put it off any longer. I've got all the edges finished on the jacket itself, so let me kind of talk y'all through the thought process that I had when I was kind of thinking through how to make this project. So I was originally thinking like, oh, you know, making a collar can be pretty difficult. I think what I'm gonna do is just buy a cheap blazer and cut the collar off of it and sew it on here because it's gonna be stoned anyway. But when I went back and looked at the photo, the collar is pure white. What I'm gonna do instead is I am going to cut out the collar shape from this medium weight interfacing that I have, and then this super plain white cotton. I had bought this cotton a long time ago to embroider on, and it's just chilling in there. I don't have any embroidery projects coming up, so I'm gonna use this and fuse it to this and then cut out the collar shape, tracing a jacket that I have. I was thinking I need to just make one big collar piece that is just like how you would make a collar for a jacket where it goes all the way around, but it would be this way instead of this way. But I actually just went back and watched the runway. I wanted to see it in motion because I feel like you can just see more angles of it, and I wanted to make sure that I was like conceptualizing the collar correctly. And when I went back and watched, the collar doesn't go around the front and the back. It's honestly just on the front, and then it has a piece that goes around her neck and attaches to the bra. I want to do something similar. I'm gonna have to think through how I want to cut out this piece, because I can still do it one continuous piece. It's just gonna be sewn onto the jacket up until like the shoulder, and then that piece will then come around and then it can be attached here, which I probably won't sew it onto the bra. What I think I'm gonna do is have the bra be separate, but then it can be attached with like a hook and eye or something like that. I just need to figure out how I'm gonna cut this out, and then once that is cut, then I can just sew it on, and then the ruffle can go in. So I'm gonna go ahead and work through how I'm gonna cut this collar. And once I figure that out, I'll let y'all know. When making my collar piece, I started by marking out 1 inch from the edge of the interfacing. This is gonna act as my seam allowance for the whole piece. And then I traced out a blazer collar shape using a jacket I had on hand as a template. And then once I had the desired shape sketched out, I cut it out and fused it with the white fabric. After fusing the fabric, I cut it out, adding a 1/2 inch of fabric around the outside edge of the collar. Then I turned this under and sewed it with a straight stitch. I think turning a bit of the fabric under and sewing it gave the whole collar a much more finished look, but you definitely don't have to follow this step if you don't want to. Last but not least, go ahead and sew on the collar to the inside of the front flap of the jacket and then fold the collar over. This step is where the whole jacket starts to come together and look a lot more like a suit. Collar is on. This was some real mental gymnastics trying to figure this out, but I am really, really thrilled with the final result. It's obviously gonna look a lot better when it's stoned because this fabric is just so dumb and cheap, but I'm really happy with the final result. I kind of tested it out, and this little neck strap is gonna work out pretty well, I think. So I'm really happy with that. I am going to now put on the ruffle, which I'm gonna do the exact same way I did with the pants. It'll be 5 layers, 3 times the length. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then tomorrow we're gonna stone this whole thing, which I think the stones, this is already looking really good, but I think the stones are just going to really, really pull the whole fantasy together. So I'm gonna go ahead and quickly off camera make the ruffle, put it in the jacket, and then I'll see y'all tomorrow for stones. It is officially time to stone this thing. So I'm gonna be using a pack of multi-sized clear stones for the collar and for the bra cup, and then I have this rhinestone sheeting that I'm gonna be using for all the pinstripes. I'll be using E6000 to adhere all of the rhinestones. This is just your classic fabric glue, especially for putting on rhinestones. It's very, very, very strong. It's also flexible, so if you use it on like the pants and the jacket, I need to be able to move my arm, bend my legs. This is a very, very flexible glue, and it definitely holds. So this is the glue that I'll be using, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put these on. So today's the perfect day to be stoning, because I just cut all of my hair off. I'm gonna go put in some dye in my hair, which the dye, I use henna, so it takes a full 5 hours to set. So I'm gonna go put that in my hair, and that gives me a full 5 hours to stone. So I'll show y'all the up close process of this. For my first step stoning the collar, I glued my largest size stones to the edge of the collar first, and then used any of the remaining large stones to fill in the collar as much as possible. Then once I had used all of my large stones, I then applied glue to the open areas and carefully applied the smaller stones with tweezers. Make sure you're patient. This does take forever, but it is worth it, I promise. For my pinstripes, I cut out rhinestone width pieces from my rhinestone sheet and then glued the strips to every other pinstripe. So I'm using this rhinestone sheeting to do all of my pinstripes, and I've used this before, but the only downfall to this is an awesome product if you like to put rhinestones on things. This stuff is amazing because it's so conveniently already in strips, and it's like actual real rhinestones, which is really nice, but they have a metal casing, like they're encased in metal, so when you cut these strips, the metal gets cut, and then you end up with all these teeny tiny little metal shavings. And these things can get in your skin if you step on them. I have cats. I don't want them to accidentally like lick these off their paws or something. So this is the only downside to using that product, is all these little bitty tiny pieces of metal. So if you do decide to use this product, just be really, really careful. Do it in an area where you're not gonna have like children or pets or anything like that. And just be very careful that if you are using this and you are getting the shavings on the floor, that you wear shoes. So that would be my one little bit of advice with this particular product. But other than that, it's going well. As one last final touch to the pants, I cut down the tops of the ruffles so that you could see them a bit more clearly when paired with the top. Thanks for watching.